recognize all of the amazing, thank you, Karen, all of the amazing caregivers and children in early intervention, as well as the dedicated professionals in the field. So the theme of this year, it is the building blocks and futures, bright futures to start strong and thrive together. So this theme embodies the commitment that we are laying down the essential foundations of every child's future success. We believe in starting early and providing the necessary support and resources to ensure that every child has the opportunity to thrive. So throughout the collaboration and partnership with families, caregivers, and communities, we work together to build a solid foundation and framework for our children to grow and learn and to reach their full potential. And we are so excited that you are here joining us in this journey. And so let's get ready to dive into this presentation. It is dictating visual impairment and unleashing the effectiveness of intervention with our fantastic speakers of today. They are not just knowledgeable, but they're also bringing incredible resources for you. So now, without any further delay, let me introduce to you Maria Malipo. She is the Director of Early Intervention in the District Support Services in St. Joseph's School of the Blind. With over 20 years of dedication and leadership under her belt, Maria is a powerhouse and she knows this field very well. And she will introduce to you another remarkable speaker for today, our main speaker, Pat Dietmar. And I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing the name. Go ahead, Maria, if you want to take over.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Karen, for the introduction. So I have here Pat Dietmar, who's been a teacher over 30 years in the field, and most of it has been with infants. So let's go directly into our workshop, detecting visual impairments and implementing effective intervention. So the earliest that you see that a child has a vision problem is the best time to intervene. So let me go to the next.
Because the visual impairment can definitely cause milestones to not be reached. That can be using your hands, that can be walking, that can be crawling, that can be connecting socially. It really impacts development overall. So you really want to get right in there as young as possible. Sometimes they develop tactile defensiveness where they don't want to touch things, use their hands, engage with textures. Eventually, this can be a safety issue when they're traveling because they don't want to hold the railing. It's cold and it's wet to go down the stairs. So to really have all those things not occur, you want to intervene as quickly as possible with the child who's visually impaired or a child who is blind.
So one of the things is what we do is called functional vision assessments. We're not doctors. We're teachers, and then Pat, you can explain a little bit more.
So we're teachers of the blind and visually impaired. So our training is basically in every area of development: gross motor, fine motor, cognitive, social, sensory. But from experience, we learn about every eye condition, the implications of an eye condition, what could the possible challenges be with that eye condition, how do you approach that eye condition, because some of them are approached in different ways. Some children need to use lights and items that are spinny. Other children's, it would impact their vision in a negative way. A child who's CVI has certain materials you really want to use with them to draw some visual attention, have the eye give the brain the message so that they can see. If the child's totally blind, now we want to intervene and have them use their hands more and to really engage in those sensory kinds of things. So each eye condition comes along with its own abilities and things that you need to use to intervene to really help that child reach their optimum development.
So we're going to go over, or Pat is going to go over signs that would indicate a child needs a functional vision assessment.
Okay, so if the child is not going after any objects as they're moved out of their range. So if you present a toy to them that has lights and sounds, and you don't see them looking at it, you don't see them trying to follow it, you don't, if they have the ability, you don't see them trying to reach for it. It's just there. They may need the functional vision assessment. If the child stims, we call it light gazing, if they're like looking up at the lights and kind of finger flicking because we're getting shadows, so I'm getting some visual input, or maybe I'm poking my eyes because I'm getting floaters and I'm getting some visual input. If they look at patterns in rugs, kind of keep going back and forth because I'm trying to get visual input, radiators, repetitive kinds of things. You know, the stoves a long time ago used to have these grills that went in and out and they had lines on them. Some of the things inside the stove, I've seen mom take them out and they're on the floor and they're cool. And we're over there kind of looking at all the lines that are in there because it's visually stimulating and I can see it a lot easier because it has these lines and grids. If the child closes their eyes when a visual stimulus is presented, it's just too much for me to handle. You know, it's coming close to my face. I close my eyes. I keep my eyes closed. You present it in different fields. I close my eyes and I'm hoping that that thing will go away because it's just too much for me to have to attend to. Child may need a functional vision. Okay. Other things that you may look for, the child is photophobic. So you take the little one outside, the eyes are closing, the hand is going up. Even a young infant, the hand will go up, the hand over the eyes. It's just too much for me. They have a hat on with a little brim. You take the hat off, you know, it's nice outside. Moms take their children for a walk. All of a sudden they're curling in a ball. I can't look at this. This is just too much light for me. Or the child is using what we call eccentric viewing. So they would have a way that they would tip their head. So their head will go one way, their eyes will go another way. And then they're trying to line up their eyes so they can see what you're presenting. It's called eccentric viewing. It's not how we look at things, but a child with a visual impairment is trying to get themselves in the best possible position so they can see what you're presenting. And that's called eccentric viewing. And a child with a nystagmus, when you look at them, their eyes are moving. They can be side to side. They can be rolling. They can be moving in opposite directions. I mean, they're basically moving in a rhythmic kind of pattern. So it's not, you know, when you would look at them, their eyes are steady and focused. So you would see some movement. It's called nystagmus. Okay. Other things to look for if the child has a strabismus. So misalignment, when we all look straight ahead, we look in a mirror, our eyes are together in the center. One eye may drift off to the side. Both eyes may drift in different directions. One eye may drift in, one eye may drift up. If your eyes are misaligned and one eye is going in one direction and the other eye is doing something else, they may need a functional vision. If the child is holding something and they're bringing it very close to their face, there might be an issue with their distance vision. So I've got to hold this over here so that I can see it better. If there's a lot of eye rubbing and if their eyes are red on a pretty regular basis, and if you see the vision kind of shutting down when they're fatigued, or you see a little more nystagmus, you see a little more strabismus, you see lack of visual attention, it's very hard work for them, obviously, to use their eyes to look at things. So when you see that they're being fatigued and they're kind of shutting down, they may need a functional vision assessment.
Okay, so one of the major vision impairments that we see is called cortical vision impairment, CVI. It's one of the hardest to diagnose, and this is what we like to focus on today, because the majority of you may see this in your children that you service. So we kind of want to focus on that. There's so many vision impairments out there, but this seems to be the highest one in early intervention that we know of.
And cortical visual impairment usually comes with possible cerebral palsy, possible motor impairment, possible brain trauma, anything like that can cause the CVI. So CVI is defined as a temporary or permanent visual impairment caused by the disturbance of the posterior visual pathway or the occipital lobes. So when the eye doctor will look at the eye, he'll say, well, their eyes look good. Everything in the eye looks good, which it does. Sclera is good, iris is good, pupil is good. But now when we look into the eye and see what the message is going into the brain, this is where processing and visual stimulus gets scrambled. So I'm looking at you, your eye looks great. The eye doctor says your eye looks great. However, how does that optic nerve look? How does the message through that optic nerve going into the brain look? So a child who has CVI has a very hard time looking at faces and translating visually who this is. And this is a very hard thing for parents to have happen because, you know, mom always likes to engage with their child. They look at the child looks back at them. There's a little bit of cooing. Faces are very difficult to discern. And it's probably one of the last things when the cortical visual impairment is kind of moving ahead and the child is doing well, that they can finally start to look at a face and interpret whose face this is if they're not given any auditory sound cues or even perfume cues or makeup cues, anything that's giving them those extra cues. I'm just looking at the face and, oh yeah, that is mom. You know, can I look and can I find mom? Sometimes if everybody had blue pants on and a black shirt, I just go to whoever. I mean, I remember mom had those blue pants, so I just grab anybody's leg that I can get to because I can't tell which one is mom. CVI children tend to seem like they're looking through you, like doll eyes. You know how a doll just has those eyes and they stare straight ahead. CVI children look like they're looking past you. They're not looking at you. And people often have said, it's like they're looking through me. They don't even see me. If there's a lot of visual clutter, it's very hard. And life is visually cluttered. It's not simplistic. So everything we look at, if we think about what we're looking at, you know, go outside, there's trees, there's flowers, there's cars, there's cement, there's changes in elevation. It's very hard to interpret what they're looking at with all that visual clutter. Sometimes they will turn their head away, get their eyes into the periphery, and maybe use the peripheral vision. But often when we're working with them also, when it's initial and they've just started, you're going to see those little breaks where they have to turn away and they have to look away before they can come back again. It's just too much for them to process. And when they're working on motor skills, looking is very difficult. So you need to change the environment a little bit when they're working on motor skills. Sometimes they won't even move out in their environment because the environment's just too cluttered for them. And again, it can be resolved with proper intervention. CVI is one of the eye conditions that always moves in a positive direction. It does not move in a negative direction. So if you can intervene, it definitely will start to improve.
Sorry.
Sorry, they turned our lights on.
Okay. Sorry, it's one of those rooms that detects.
Okay, basic principles of early intervention for children who are blind or visually impaired. Okay, so for children who are blind or visually impaired, you have to allow more time for them to acquire developmental skills. So if a child is not getting up, not crawling, not moving, there can always be a 6-month delay, and that's very typical. It's not that they really are delayed at that point. There can be a 6-month delay. They can learn to walk until they're 18 to 20 months. So it may take them longer to develop some skills. Their sequences of learning, you know, we say we need to learn A and then B and then C, and we kind of build on those building blocks. Their sequences can be different. They can learn A and they can do D, and then they're doing F, and then they come back to B, and then they get C. So they don't follow that typical pattern of everything in order. Incidental learning sometimes does not take place. So you have to take them over to the refrigerator, open the door, feel the cold, Let's reach in and take something out. Oh, we have the milk. We're going to close the door. So you have to really guide them and talk them through and physically present what would be incidental learning, because it just may not happen. And guided exploration and verbal explanations are very necessary. So if you think you're talking too much, you're not. You want to describe every single thing that you're doing. You know, we're coming into the room. Oh, the door is open. Did you hear it? If it made a little sound, the door is going to close. Boom, the door is closed. So you're building their vocabulary, their speech, and their language, but you're also giving them that incidental learning that's just not taking place, that other children have just happened in their life and their world. And initially you want to use real objects and real experiences. I'll give you an example. Child was already in preschool and the teacher said, we're going to make horses. Okay, well, a horse is a very big object. So it was this little piece of paper. It was raised line, but then they were going to glue string on the tail. So now the little one with the visual impairment is thinking, oh, this is a horse. No, this is not a horse. So if you can get to a horse, it will be much better because you have the smell of the horse. You can feel the size of the horse. You can feel the size of the tail and what it feels like texture-wise. So you don't want to say this is, because it's not. You really need the actual object or the real experience. And years ago, there was a zoo that really taxidermy a lot of wild animals. So the children were able to feel a tiger. What does he feel like? How big is he? Even an airplane. You know, what is an airplane? How big is an airplane? An airplane is huge. And we've had some airlines allow us to bring the children onto the plane and walk around out on the tarmac and really listen to those engines and feel the plane and really see, you know, how big is an airplane? An airplane is not small. It's not a small little toy that you're playing with. But to get that visual input, you really need to have the real objects and the real experience as much as possible. Okay, so we talked about, you know, basic principles of early intervention for children who are blind or visually impaired. So the active involvement and the participation is very important. If mom is making pudding, you want the child to help so that they can feel the beater, they can hear the beater, they can stick their finger in the pudding and see what it feels like. They can taste the pudding. Any kind of active participation, even if it's a little one, and you're working on motor skills, you want to use a wide variety of textures to talk about body parts, your hands, your fingers, the back of your hand, the front of your hand, your arms, your feet, your legs. You're giving them the sensory input, but you're also giving them the body and the spatial awareness. So active participation is very important. Children with visual impairments do need special instruction and guidance from professionals who have expertise in addressing their specific needs and their specific disability. Again, sometimes lights are not a good thing for a child with a visual impairment. It might cause further issues. Sometimes lights are necessary for a child with a visual impairment, depending on what the impairment is. If the child is CVI, do they need a light box? Do they need to start with overlays, shiny pom-poms, a wide variety of materials that would really encourage them to look, to attend, to build those CVI skills so that they're using their vision much better. And your specialist should be involved in all phases of planning and implementation of an educational program of a young child who is visually impaired. I had a little guy would not go up the stairs. His PT said, no, he's physically capable. He has the right amount of core strength. He's got good leg strength, just would not go up those stairs. And I believe the stairs to him looked like a ramp because he could not differentiate how each stair, what they were like a beigey brown, one tone, and he didn't see stairs. He saw a ramp. So in order to make that easier for him and have him take a step up, we took tape and we edged and high contrast tape. So these stairs are like popping, so you can't miss them. We edged every stair in the front and the back, in the front and the back. So now, oh, now I can see stairs. You're right. They're different. Now there's some differentiation. I'm not trying to step up a ramp that all of a sudden changes when I'm trying to walk up it. So now we have a behavior problem that really is not a behavior problem. I can't see this, and I'm too little to tell you that I can't see it. So when specialists work together, it really benefits the child immensely. Okay, so in the sequence of visual development. So when you have a young child, a young infant, first there's some awareness, then there's attention, and then understanding a stimuli or looking towards it. So first there's awareness that there's something in my environment. There's my mom or my dad in my environment. There's the mobile that's hanging over my crib, and I start to pay attention to it. And then I start to interpret, oh, that's the mobile that they wind up, and it plays the music, and then it starts to move around. First, there's attention to light, and then after that to people and to objects. Now, again, that can change. We're saying people, we're not saying faces. If it's a CVI child, there may be an awareness that that's my mom and that's my dad, and I'm picking up different cues because of maybe mom wears red lipstick all the time, or she wears a certain perfume all the time that we're not even aware of, but the baby is picking that up, not necessarily faces if it's CVI. And first, the child will fixate in one plane, in one visual plane, and then they'll start to track depending on, again, is there a field loss? Is there a hemianopsia? Can I get my eyes over there to be able to track? This is why it's important to have a professional on your team to be able to say, no, she's she's not able to see everything on the left side. That's why she's not turning her head and getting her eyes over there. And first there's interest in near objects and things that I can see close up. And then after that, there's interest in objects that are at a distance. Now, again, looking at that first, there's the peripheral vision, and then we come to the central vision. CVI children tend to always, I have never seen it different, have you?
No, not at all.
Always peripheral first, always. So there's always this little head tilt and the eyes are going to the side. Very hard for them to come from the periphery into the center. So it's something that we work on. Upper and lower fields, not always acknowledging them. Maybe, again, it starts in the periphery, and now I come down in the periphery to look here, but I'm not going to come into the center. First, there's a preference for familiar stimuli, and then things that are novel. And then first they see a part of the item, and then they see the whole item. So they don't see the whole item initially. First, it might be a piece of the rattle, and then I can expand to see the whole rattle. And children are interested in simple objects and then complex objects in design. And again, if we look at the CVI child, simple is always best. Shiny with movement is always next. Those are easier to see, and I usually will attend to those first. If you give me things that are very complex, I'm going to turn away. I'm not going to look at them. It's too much to process. And first, there's interest in very large items, and usually large items that are bright and colorful, maybe have lights attached to them. And then we grade down smaller and smaller and smaller till we get to very tiny items that might be a little tiny peg that might be a half an inch in size. And again, considering the age too, or are they a mouther? Are they going to put this in their mouth? So you have to kind of adapt in that manner too. If you're going to use Cheerios, you have to use something that gives it high contrast. I can eat the Cheerios, but can I find them on a white tray? Probably not. So I've got to do something to give the high contrast so I can find those Cheerios when they're scattered all over my tray. And suggestions for encouraging a child with visual impairment to learn. You want to always check the amount of lighting in the room. You need to have good overhead lighting. If you're working with them, you don't want them facing the windows. You'd rather have their back to the windows because the glare that's coming from the windows is going to maybe distract them, or it's going to make them harder to look at things, but you do want to make sure you have good illumination in a room. You definitely want to have high contrast items to work with. As I said, with my little guy, it was just a ramp. I was stepping up a ramp until we definitely differentiated each stair. What a huge difference, because now there's high contrast and I can see where I'm stepping. You can encourage singing songs for the parent to get the child to fixate on the parent's face, to look at the parent a little bit more. Little ones always love Wheels on the Bus. They love the Itsy Bitsy Spider. They love all those kinds of things. So homemade songs, if you make a song up, sometimes we make up songs as we're trying to move through a new skill. The child will have a tendency to fixate and listen more. Place objects in the child's best field of vision for looking and scanning. So I totally get, we want to have nice posture, head in midline. But if I can't see where I'm going, or I can't see what I'm reaching for, continuously telling me to keep my head this way and to look this way can only be frustrating for me. I mean, I might need to tilt my head. I might need to shift my eyes. It's not the best looking posture. It's not what PTs and OTs are looking for. But if that's where my best field of vision is, then I need to be able to fix my head, put it where I need it, and get my eyes where I need them. And you can always bring them back to their good posture so that they don't get locked into that kind of posture. But if I can only see lower fields, need to tilt my head, need to shift my eyes over to the right, that's where I need to be to look at things. And children in general will put their head and their eyes where they need them, as opposed to having like really nice posture and having myself in alignment. Suggestions for encouraging a child with visual impairment to learn. Consistent words and phrases. You don't want to keep changing around what you're telling them. When you've labeled something, it's a good idea that everybody knows exactly what you're calling it. Doesn't matter whether it's a silly name or not initially, what the family uses to call it, but you want everybody to be consistent with the words and the phrases so that they understand also what these directions are that you're giving me. Provide choices of toys to encourage them to shift their attention. So a wide variety of toys are great. Initially, I always say when they're very little, you want to give them all the bells and whistles. So if you have toys that have lights and music, but they're not seizure-prone children, bring out the lights, the music, all of that. Little by little, you start to pull that away because life is not a bunch of lights and music and things singing to us all the time. We need to use our vision for most things that don't give us any feedback. But you do want to start with toys that have lights and have music and give them a whole lot of input before you start to take things away. You definitely want to encourage the child to bat, to grasp, to kick. You know, if they're a little one, you want to give that sensory input into the hands, the fingers, each finger, the palms, the arms, the feet, the legs. Again, even using textures, using lotions, describing those body parts to them. And then if the child has a little bit of photophobia or it's difficulty for them outside, sunglasses are helpful. Again, you know, we reach a certain age, we're 2 years old, I don't want to leave them on, they're going to go flying. It's typical, it happens. You try to put them back on again. Or if they'll wear like a baseball hat or a visor or something to reduce sun glare so that they're giving you a little bit of shade. Some of my moms have said, you know, I have the overhang flap extra long on the carriage so that they're not having a terrible experience when they're outside, like grimacing and pulling back because the sun is just too bright for them. And suggestions for encouraging a child with visual impairment to learn. So you want to encourage the child to explore a wide variety of objects and as much tactile input as you can give them and that they'll tolerate. Some children tolerate hard, smooth items better than mushy, soft Play-Doh type items. So you want to approach with what their level of tolerance is and then try to integrate with all of those other types of tactile materials. But tactile exploration is very important. You want to encourage the child to participate in all steps of a process, such as making pudding, if they're a little bit older. So you want them to help you open the box, shake it into the bowl, turn the beater on, put the beater in, let the beater spin. Are we adding milk? Let's go to the refrigerator again. Let's get the milk out. Oh, it's cold. So you want them to help you with every step of the process so they start to understand their world. Labeling things in their environment is very important, telling them what is the chair, the table. If the child is blind, we usually encourage labeling with Braille or Braille stickers. And usually the TVI will help you, label everything in your house so that when the child comes upon it, it's that incidental learning. They can start to feel what those Braille dots feel like. And you tell them, oh, you found the refrigerator. Oh, that's the kitchen table. And you encourage, again, to build that tactile input. Introduce concepts again in a natural context. So it's that whole thing about going out to the park, going out to the playground, going to the food store, going to the zoo, going to a family birthday party, really being in the natural context and natural environment so they can have that exposure. And again, you want to reinforce all those concepts across all environments. And first you want, again, back to the tactile development, which is so important. You want to use the child's body first to learn the concepts. So you can go through them in the house if you're doing over, under, around, through. You can go through tunnels. You can go in and out of a closet. You can climb over the sofa. And then you can take that into the park and into the playground, into the family's backyard to really expand what those concepts are.
This is important, especially if you have a child who's totally blind, because what we're trying to teach them is eventually to use the Braille, and they have to be able to tactually, those dots to feel them. And as for the body parts, if they learn how their body is reacting, we have what is called orientation mobility. That's the person that shows how the child how to travel within their space and their environment. So this is why it's so important.
And they may be a cane traveler too. So again, you've got to hold on to that cane to learn all the steps to travel in your environment and how to use that cane. If I don't want to hold this spongy item that you've given me because I don't like spongy things, now it's kind of been, it could be an incident where they're going to get hurt and they're going to fall off a curb. They're going to trip. They're going to bump into things because I don't want to hold on to that cane. I don't like the way the end of it feels. You can always change it and adapt it, but you still got to be able to hold on to it so that you can travel safely in your environment.
And that takes a while for a child to learn, because most children at an early age, when they're given a cane, they use it as a weapon because they don't know at this point, leave me alone. So the best thing they have is this long stick that they can hit you with. So there are prerequisites to using a cane.
Yeah, or they tend to swing it around. It's a toy now. So let me see if I can swing this thing all over the place, but it's not doing what it's supposed to be doing to help you in your environment. So it does take time for them to really learn how to use the cane. And we usually do pre-canes, which is, it's made different than the travel cane for the real little ones. And some of them have been very good with the pre-cane, or a shopping cart. Let's take the shopping cart outside and let's see how this works. Following directions while you're pushing the shopping cart. What did you bump into? Uh-oh, you hit the tree. You got to turn your shopping cart. So they start to understand that this device is helping me find things, and it's helping me find things in my environment. But it does, Maria's right. It takes a while. It does take a while. Suggestions for encouraging children with VI to learn. Place things in the same location. This is really important. I had a family that just kept moving the furniture around here. It was very upsetting to the child because this week the couch was on the left wall. The following week it was on the right wall. Then the couch was moved and 2 chairs were introduced. So this child did not want to move. Well, I don't blame him because I'm not sure what I'm going to find when I'm moving. So you really want to leave furniture in the same location. If you're having them get something out of the refrigerator, same location. If they're going to help you get some silverware to bring to the table, same location. Toys in their room in the setup. You don't want to keep moving things around so that they have to try to find where you put them. Remember, either low vision or no vision makes it very difficult to be able to find those things. Provide boundaries to define workspaces such as a tray. So if they have like a work tray for their sensory activities, even a work tray, if they're coloring, if I have my crayons and my markers here, and yes, blind children do color, we raise line the paper because everybody else in their social environment may be coloring, so I want to color too. So scented markers give you a little smell. If you raise line what they're coloring, they can feel it. But if you have a tray, at least if my marker rolls to the right or it rolls to the left, the tray stops it. So it's not rolling on the floor. And now I have to listen very carefully to where it went. And now I have to try to find it. So it makes it a lot harder. So now you're really increasing the level of frustration. So boundaries in a tray and a workspace is helpful. Texture exploration is really important. That's why I really emphasize like lotions and textures and feather dusters and paint rollers and paint brushes and all those sandpaper and sand and all those kinds of things. Because if that child is going to be a Braille reader, they really have to sensitize their fingers and they have to be able to figure out what those dots are. And if they're going to travel in their environment, even with low vision, you want them to travel safely. I don't want to touch something. It really upsets me. I let go and there happen to be a bunch of stairs there. So you really want to have the texture exploration from an early age. And that way you can kind of not have that tactile defensiveness develop. And again, exploration everywhere, community sites are really important. The playground, maybe you have an older sibling that goes to school and they're having a spring concert. Go to the spring concert. Go to grandma's house. Grandma's house is different than mommy and daddy's house. Grandma may have a yard. Grandma may live in an apartment building. It's another experience. Community sites and that go to the library. Very, very important. Okay. So you can look at this and you can try to read it. You probably will be able to read it because of your age and your reading experience. However, imagine if you have a visual impairment, you don't have life experience, and you're looking at something, you try to figure this out. This is nauseating. I mean, it really, when you keep trying to figure this out and you keep looking at it, it's frustrating. It's somewhat nauseating. It's difficult. You may pull away and say, I really don't want to do this. So that's why it's really important to adapt things and have things set for the child who is blind or visually impaired. And then we have our little person over here who has the Snellen chart. The Snellen chart is an eye test, but it's usually for kindergarten and higher. But the ophthalmologist does have some other eye tests that are appropriate for younger children. And then there are some eye tests that are appropriate probably for cognitively intact 3-year-olds, where you do a birthday cake and umbrella, raindrops, things that children are familiar with. And they start at a larger size and they grade down. And for the real little ones, there's also a line test. When they're not looking anymore at the lines, they obviously can't see them. Were they the big fat black and white lines since they were attending, and when the lines got very tight and small, they were not looking at them. So there's a lot of ways for the ophthalmologist, besides maybe having some sort of pre-diagnosis that came from the NICU or whatever, to figure out what this child is seeing and what their visual impairment is. And then on the bottom, we have Braille dots and they say, thank you. Okay. In transition, children with visual impairment or blindness have the right to a functional vision evaluation and a learning media assessment by a trained certified teacher, TVI, of the blind and visually impaired, to really tell you what appropriate services are. So learning media assessment being one little girl that comes to mind, she was already using a computer in school. However, she was not able to see that keyboard. So what we did was we looked at different kinds of keyboard. We looked at different kinds of colors, and it worked out for her. We put yellow and black worked best for her. It made the keys pop. You can figure those things out with learning media assessment. We had another child, we brailled the whole keyboard, and then she was able to know where her letters were, and she was able to use the computer also. There's many other things that can be adapted, like markers can be put in the hallway of a school so that they know, oh, I've reached the gym, because it feels like this marker. Oh, I've reached cafeteria because it feels like this marker. There are also sound markers that can be used. Again, you can change the coloring on the stairs so that they can see where they're going. So those are environmental kinds of things that can help, but the learning media assessment can also tell you, are they able to see the size of this print? Are they not able to see the size of this print? Do we need to use a CCTV or something else to really enlarge this for the child? Are they going to be a Braille reader? So those are very important for children when they transition. Usually you can do it 3 or 4, but again, 5 when they're going to kindergarten, then it's important to have that done. And a functional vision evaluation from birth onward to just let you know what they're seeing, where things need to be positioned, where paper and crayons need to be put if they're going to engage with those things. If they go to gym, do we need to wrap that net that they're going to be shooting a ball into? And what color ball do we need to use so that they can see the ball while, you know, they're engaging with all their peers and they're part of the group and they're not being left out and they're not being singled out because the adaptations have been made for them so that they can function in their environment.
And the reason we say this is important because, you know, if your child is going into the school district and the district is not familiar with a child who's visually impaired and blind, the child should, let's say, have behaviors in the classroom. Well, could it be that something with the light in the room? And this is why this child is acting this way. The rubbing of the eyes, is the child tired? It's not a matter of just having the child sitting in front of the room. That, you know, sometimes that's not even the reason why the child vision is bothering.
I mean, are they facing the window? And so they've got photophobia and they've got this extreme sun glare coming in and the shades are up and I'm putting my head down. Well, pick your head up. Well, I can't because I can't see anything when I pick my head up. So even coming in and saying, look, you need to turn your back towards the window. At another class using all white glue. No good. We have to get purple glue for this little one. And everybody else can have purple glue too, which is fun. So now I have some contrast and I can see where my glue went on the paper before I pick up my high contrast item to glue it onto the paper, as opposed to I have white on white and now I'm going to have a meltdown over a behavior problem. Well, not really. We just need to adapt some things.
And the scary part too, within the school environment, fire drills, you know, the stairs may not necessarily have the special lighting that the child may have to go down the stairs. So what we see sometimes when we're asked to go into the school, when they have a fire drill, we see that the teacher is dragging the child down the stairs. Well, you can cause injury with that. While, you know, it just had to adapt the stairs for this child because you may not be with the child all the time and you want to make sure that the child gets safely out of the building.
And even positioning in the line to leave the building. You know, there's a place that's better in the line and there's a place that's not so good in the line when you're trying to leave quickly. So they may seem like small, simple things, but they're all things that help the child.
And that's it. That is our presentation. So we're open for any questions that you guys may have.
Thank you so much, Maria. I think Karen wanted to say something, and there is some questions in the chat as well. So go ahead, Karen.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I do have to start before I let anyone else ask you any questions. I spoke with you for a few minutes before we started, so you know that my son does have several visual issues. I felt so validated by everything you said. And I think so many people need to hear the things you've said. For example, we did not know if my son would be able to read lots of issues, and he is able to read, but the TVI had said print should be, you know, font should be this size. Teachers find that he can read at the regular size font. But as you noted, you can get really tired. You could get nauseous. You could get whatever. So he will, but only for a short time. After that, guess what? He gets cranky. And they, you know, but they think, well, he can read that. No, he can. But just, you know, imagine you broke your arm. You might still be able to do this, but you're tired from doing it or whatever. But And you pointed out so many things to me that, having been through them, I also have nystagmus and strabismus and other such things. So you've clarified so many things. I think you folks are a wonderful resource.
Thank you.
I do want to go straight to Elise's question too, because I think this her question is absolutely fantastic. And you may have seen in the chat, she said, "How do you distinguish visual stimming or eccentric viewing or looking through something from autism spectrum disorder?"
Very good question. Very good question. I would definitely defer to a developmental pediatrician. And I would definitely also go to the ophthalmologist, so you can have both opinions. The developmental pediatrician can diagnose whether there is autism or not. And of course, you can have your report from your ophthalmologist, which is going to tell you what the eye condition is. Sometimes you're absolutely correct. You do see the stimming, you see the eccentric viewing, you see the looking through you. With autism, absolutely.
Mhm.
But I would definitely defer to you as a TVI may have seen this and you may know in your heart exactly what's happening, but you really need to have the other professionals look at the child to determine, whether it is autism or not.
There's times where they're diagnosed a child with autism at age 1, and we are seeing the child for visual impairment, and we recommend that the parents see an ophthalmologist, only because they look so much alike and the child is still developing. So we feel like maybe it's not autism, it's the vision. So.
And you can look at the eye condition too, like children who are doing the head tilt with the eccentric viewing. If the eye condition warrants that as part of their diagnosis, like that's how they're going to approach their world. You can't rule out autism. You want to follow up on that. But you also can say, well, wait a minute, this is a typical behavior for somebody who has this visual impairment. And then you look at all the other components also that go along with that. Did that help? Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions? Please feel free to put in a chat or unmute yourself.